We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we explore the art of songwriting, celebrate some incredible artists and dive deep into the stories behind their music. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and as always, thank you for joining us. Our guest today on the podcast is the phenomenal indie rock songwriter Blondshell. The musical project of Sabrina Teitelbaum burst onto the scene in 2023 with her self-titled debut, which was an explosive mix of visceral indie rock and dry deadpan humour that garnered critical acclaim across the globe. Today, she's returning with her sophomore album, If You Asked for a Picture. It's a bold evolution that sees the Los Angeles-based songwriter expanding her sonic world while exploring themes of control, self-awareness, and personal growth. Now, in today's episode, we are chatting with Sabrina about If You Asked for a Picture and the songwriting process behind this stunning new chapter. We discuss reuniting with producer Yves Rothman, her intention to experiment with traditionally masculine sonic palettes, and how she first fell in love with songwriting. We also touch on her memories of Laneway Festival here in Australia and whether we might see her back on tour down under anytime soon. Now, we want to say a huge thank you to Jess for her help with today's episode. The new Blondshell record, If You Ask for a Picture, is out right now, and you can find links within the show notes to stream the album, purchase it, and follow Sabrina across all of her socials. Now, while you're there, don't forget to follow us as well and subscribe to this very podcast. We've already had some amazing guests this year, and with the podcast heading to Los Angeles next week, we've got some exciting names coming your way. Now, let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Blondshell. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Sabrina Teitelbaum, aka Blondshell. Sabrina, hello. How's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing super well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today and coming onto the podcast to chat about a brand new Blondshell record. It's very exciting. There is a brand new record. It's called If You Ask for a Picture. When people are listening to our conversation, it's out right now. Firstly, congratulations on this record. How are you feeling with it out now in the world?
I feel really good. I just have had the record for a long time, and I'm really excited for people to hear it and like form their own relationships with the songs and get used to it and get to know it.
It is an incredible record, and I can imagine that there's, after sitting with those songs for kind of so long, it's nice to be able to share them and show people what it is that you've been holding on to for the last, 12 months or so. This is a beautiful record. I can see a lot of people resonating with this record really, really well. And it kind of expands the Blondshell sonic palette, if you will, that there's a lot of kind of different textures and different things going on here this time around. For you, I guess when heading into writing the second record, did you know what your intentions were with wanting to kind of mix things up or have it sound different from that first record that came out?
I had some intentions for how I wanted it to be different, but I mostly intended for it to be similar. I just wanted to do the same thing, like the same process. I worked with the same band, same producer, same studio. So I wanted it to be pretty similar to the last album sonically. And I had certain things in mind that I wanted to be different. Like with the last record, all of the harmonies on it were super last minute and off the cuff. Like when we were tracking lead vocals, I was just like, oh, I could hear a third here, whatever. I wanted it to be much more intentional with the backgrounds and map it out and have all these thick pads of background vocals. And I wanted it to be a bit longer. Like my first album was 9 songs and I felt like it was a little too short for my taste. Mm-hmm. So there were some things that I knew I wanted to be different, but it ended up a lot more different than I had planned on. Like I wanted it to be just a little bit different.
Did you recognize or realize like when that moment had kind of happened, when it was more different and maybe more dynamic than originally planned? Was there like was there a crystal clear moment where you recognized that?
I think I slowly realized it after I turned it in. I was like, oh, everyone is telling me this is really different.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, it wasn't that different. And then people started telling me that. And I was like, oh, I guess they're right. It is. I mean, there's just like more going on. It's just a longer record. We did a lot more. We spent a lot more time on it. There are a lot more instruments. It's just a lot more of everything. So, of course, it's different.
Which is totally fair. I think sometimes when you're in the midst of creating something or doing something, it's almost like you're too close to it, in that sense of once you take the step back and look at it as a whole, it can kind of reveal different things. I would love to discuss one item that I kind of read. I know that you worked once again with Yves Rothman as the producer for this record, which I believe there's a beautiful partnership between the two of you. And there was one thing that I read somewhere, I want to make sure I get the quote right, that you wanted to draw from records that maybe previously were, I don't want to say reserved, but had hyper kind of masculine sounds around them and put like a more, I guess, a feminine tone to them and not just have them reserved for masculine kind of musicians, like Queens of the Stone Age, Red Hot Chili Peppers. How did you approach that? Because I imagine that that's an interesting thing to kind of take on. And I guess, what did you find that you learned from it?
I think it's so subjective. Like what I hear and think of as a really heavy masculine sound it's not just like a factual thing. It's just how I personally hear it. And so I think it probably says more about my own relationship with that and what it's like to work as a woman in this genre and in these studio spaces. It probably says more about that than it does about the songs. But I think I just felt like I think in a streaming era, everybody wants to put stuff in boxes even more than before. And everyone wants to talk about references and subgenre and all this stuff. And so I think there's something that happens where if you're a woman and you're making music, you have to sort of like talk about references of other women. And if you're a guy, you're supposed to talk about other references from guys. And I was just like, wait, why did I assume that? That's not what I have to do. You know, it's just like so subjective. It's so specific to my experience. But yeah.
But I think it has kind of worked in your favor in terms of this record, because there were sounds where, and like maybe it's the way that we have been not even raised, but I guess in the way that society has built it so that your brain, even without thinking about it, I thought of references or tried to think of things that automatically went to like a female artist. And then it was like listening to the tracks for a second and third time, it was like, that doesn't really seem right, or it seems like I'm not really doing justice to what you've done with this record if I'm just being like, oh, it... I think there was one song where I was like, it's kind of like Sheryl Crow. And then I listened to it again. I was like, it's nothing like Sheryl Crow. I think I'm just, it's part of that brain thing that you get tricked into thinking it has to sound like something that is based on that, which I thought, again, works in its favor because it sounds kind of like nothing else. I thought that there was some really, really strong tracks on this. I loved the difference in the music and some quieter moments, some louder moments. Wondering if you might indulge me in talking about one of the songs that I really loved on the record. I loved Event of a Fire, the way that song builds, the guitar at the end, and how it just kind of pierces through. Wondering whether you might be able to talk to us about, I guess, the creation of that track and where it kind of came from.
I think a lot of the songs are about like if you go through something really big, like somebody dies or you have a breakup or like any big, massive life event, it's sort of like a warranted emotion that's okay to have. But I think in everyday life, if you're feeling things really intensely, it can be kind of shameful and people don't want to talk about everyday emotions with so much weight because it's sort of like, what right do you have to feel that way? And I think most of the songs on this album and the last album are really kind of about everyday life and feeling overwhelmed by it and like trying to navigate it. And I think that song is sort of summing that up. And it's just how sort of stuff that weighs on you every day compounds. And for me, there are themes that came up on the whole album, like my relationship with how the media talks about body image and women's bodies. Like that's something that I never had one big event around, but it's something that sort of chipped away at me my whole life. And like reading that in the tabloids and like how like diets are sold to people. And there was no event. It just was something that built and built and built and got heavier and heavier and heavier. And then at some point you're like, I'm exhausted physically, I'm exhausted emotionally by all of this. And I don't know how to find the reason for it or the way to talk about it. And in a lot of ways, that's what that song's about.
I very much appreciate you sharing that with us. It is a fantastic track, and it's something that I guess having a listen to you now describe it, it is throughout the record there's kind of more songs, I guess maybe in difference to that debut where it was talking about not necessarily other people but looking directly at a thing, and whereas this seems to be looking at more like the how and whys and I guess the situations that we find ourselves in now. Wondering again whether you might indulge me. We are primarily like a songwriting podcast. If you could talk us through what originally got you interested in songwriting and kind of sharing your, like, I guess your thoughts in a musical capacity.
For sure. I think one of the things that like, it wasn't that heavy. It's just, I loved music and was really obsessed with music as a kid. And so it was so natural to be like, oh, I'm obsessed with other people's songs. What if I could try to make my own song? That would be so cool. Or like going to a show as a kid and seeing that there's a person there who wrote those songs and it's about their life. I think I felt like, oh, why not me? Why can't I do that? So part of it was for that reason. And then when I got a bit older, it was like a place to say things that I didn't feel comfortable saying otherwise, like diary kind of writing.
Which I think is a very normal thing. We've spoken to a lot of songwriters on here where it seems to be that it's a medium or an avenue that you can kind of use that you maybe wouldn't have in conversation with a friend or a loved one, which I think is maybe like the power, of music. From this new record, Sabrina, looking forward to, I believe that there's a number of tour dates across the US. Curious for yourself if there's a track off this new record that you're looking forward to kind of playing live and giving it its live debut.
There's a song called Arms that's at the beginning of the record, and I'm really excited to play that one live. I just think it'll be really fun.
100%. I think that there's, again, I know I kind of keep using the word dynamic throughout our interview today, so apologies if that's getting a little tired, but I
had not noticed, actually.
I've shot myself in the foot there. I think that there's quite like a lot of range on this album, so I think it's going to be incredible to kind of witness live. We're actually heading to the States in a few weeks, so we're going to try and catch you at one of those shows in May, I believe. But I have to ask.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, very much looking forward to trying to make it happen. I do have to ask, it seems like a little bit of an obvious question, but Australian fans, can we maybe expect to see some Blondshell shows in support of the record at some point, maybe this year, maybe next year?
I would guess next year, but definitely. I was just literally minutes ago saying that I want to do that and we're trying to figure out when, but definitely, for sure.
You have toured to Australia before, haven't you?
Yeah, I was there not this past January, but the year before.
Right. I do have to ask, any key memories? How did you find it? Were we okay as like an audience crowd kind of perspective?
You guys were great. I loved Laneway and loved walking around Melbourne. It was just like such a new place for me because I had never been there before, and I had a great time.
Look, absolutely love that. I know that you've got a lot of fans here, so hopefully those dates, whenever they might come next year, fingers crossed that we've got something on the cards. Sabrina, we usually ask our guests to wrap things up what they're currently listening to. For yourself, is there anything that's currently on high rotation?
I'm listening to a lot of Andy Schaaf. I really like him. And yesterday, like when you love a song and you listen to it so many times that you get sick of it, and then you stop listening to it for like 2 years, and then you find it again. I did that with a lot of his last album. I just was so obsessed with it when it came out that I haven't listened to it in like 2 years. And then yesterday I started revisiting.
I absolutely love that, though. Fantastic record from Andy. So I think great choice from yourself. Sabrina, thank you so much for coming to chat with us. The new Blondshell record is If You Ask for a Picture. It's out now when people are listening to this chat. But looking forward to hopefully seeing you in Australia. But thank you for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll see you on tour.